My daughter-in-law screamed at 4 a.m., only to learn I'd locked her out of my house for good. It is 4 in the morning, and a wild scream cuts through the walls of my apartment building like a knife. A sharp, hysterical scream full of rage. I hear violent pounding against my door. Thump, thump, thump. The sound is frantic, desperate, echoing through the usually silent hallway of this old downtown building. My neighbors are turning on their lights, shadows flickering beneath their doors. I, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea in my hands, do not move, not 1 inch, because I know exactly who is out there, and I know exactly why she is screaming. My daughter-in-law Chloe has just discovered that I changed the locks on my apartment. This place is mine. The one I bought with 40 years of work paid for by cleaning offices at night, scrubbing floors at dawn, hauling trash bags that weighed more than my soul. This apartment, this 2-bedroom sanctuary in the old district, is the only thing I have ever truly owned. And today, finally, I locked it again for good. If you have ever felt dismissed, overlooked, or betrayed by the very people you sacrificed everything for, comment 1 right now, or simply like this video to show you are here. Because this is the story of how I stopped being a victim and reclaimed my dignity. To understand this moment, this quiet, resolute defiance in the face of such chaos, you must know how a mother who had devoted her life to service arrived at such a cold, final decision. My name is Grace Herrera, and I am 66 years old. I have been a widow for 15 years. It was a cold winter night when my husband, a kind but overworked man, left me without a word, felled by a sudden heart attack. He left me alone with a 12-year-old son, Mark, and a mountain of medical bills that swallowed our savings whole. I didn't have time to grieve the loss of my Mark. My Mark, who used to put his cold hands on my neck just to make me jump. I had to clean. I took on 3 shifts, sometimes working until my fingers bled, so that Mark could have a proper education, so he could always wear clean clothes, so he would never feel the pinch of poverty. I was a mother. And that's what we do, isn't it? We break ourselves in silence so our children can stand whole. My dream was simple: to see Mark happy and settled. When he graduated from the state university and got a stable job at a tech firm, I thought my mission was complete. Then he met Chloe. I remember the first time I saw her at a small Italian place we visited for his birthday. She was tall, with a perfect practiced smile and immaculate, always polished nails that shone under the restaurant lights. I remember thinking how elegant, how polished, how lucky my hardworking son was to find a woman of such caliber. When Mark told me they were getting married, I cried right there in the small dining room of my apartment, tears of genuine happiness. After so many silent years, I was going to have a full family again. The initial plan was for them to save money for their own place, maybe a nice townhouse in the suburbs. And I, like the devoted, slightly foolish mother I was, opened my door wide. "Stay as long as you need," I told them, wiping my happy tears. "My house is your house." Mark hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Chloe smiled a flash of white perfection and called me Mom with such sweet affection. I truly believed I was doing the right thing. I believed a mother should always provide a soft landing for her children, no matter the cost to herself. The first few months were a quiet joy. Chloe sometimes helped cook, asking me about my day at work, trivial questions, but they filled the silence I had grown so used to. Mark, though busy with his new job, would always give me a quick kiss on the forehead before retreating to their room. I started sleeping better, feeling useful, feeling loved, the crushing weight of loneliness finally lifting. I felt like the apartment, which for years had been a shrine to solitude, was finally a home again. I started thinking that maybe the endless cleaning and scrubbing had been worth it just for this peace. But peace, as I learned, is fragile when built on misplaced trust. The change was so subtle at first, a whisper, a shadow I chose to ignore. It began with the rearrangement of my life. I would come home exhausted, to find small things shifted, always rationalized by Chloe's perfect smile. She started with the objects of sentiment, the things that made the apartment mine. I remember searching for the old heavy wedding vase my husband had given me. It wasn't on the living room shelf where it had sat for 15 years. When I asked, trying to keep my voice light, she simply pointed to a dark corner closet. "Oh, Mom," she said without skipping a beat, "it just looks so old-fashioned there. It doesn't match anything we have." She dismissed a piece of my history, a remnant of my lost love, as if it were an irrelevant piece of junk. She looked at me with those cold, perfect eyes, and I, afraid to seem like the cliché bitter mother-in-law, swallowed my discomfort. I let it go. I told myself it was just a vase. Then came the bigger, more painful adjustments. The armchair. My old, overstuffed armchair, where I sat every night to watch the local news, where I mended clothes, where I sometimes just sat and stared into the beautiful silence I had worked so hard for. One day I arrived from my shift and found a sleek, modern, terribly uncomfortable piece of furniture in its place. All sharp edges and no cushioning. Chloe explained she had bought it because we needed to update the space a bit. We needed. As if this place belonged to both of us, as if she had the right to decide what stayed and what went. But Mark seemed happy, proud of his wife's vision, and I didn't want to ruin his happiness, the very thing I had sacrificed my youth to protect. So I smiled. I nodded. And every night after that, I sat on that horrible, angular piece of furniture that dug into my back, feeling the constant dull ache of being erased in my own home. I chose to endure the physical pain rather than face the emotional conflict. The situation was now a ticking clock, but I was blind to the danger. I was still operating on the old programming. Mothers give, mothers endure. Mothers stay silent so their children can thrive. I thought I was doing the right thing. The first few months were good, but then something changed. It was so subtle at first, I didn't even notice the viper I'd invited into my sanctuary. Tuyệt vời. Tôi sẽ tiếp tục triển khai. Chương 2 theo dàn ý. D1 đảm bảo số từ mục tiêu và mạch cảm xúc. Bức xúc, phẫn nộ lên cao. Chương 2 bị xâm chiếm trong chính ngôi nhà của mình. Khoảng 900 to hook. It started with a vase. A small, subtle change that marked the beginning of her taking over my life, one piece at a time. The subtle changes of Chapter 1 soon escalated into an outright invasion, a slow, methodical chipping away at the sanctity of my home and my very identity. If the removal of my husband's vase and the replacement of my comfortable armchair were merely warnings, what followed was the full assault. Chloe stopped asking. She started assuming. And I, terrified of being seen as the bitter mother-in-law, from the stories, kept smiling, kept nodding, kept absorbing the pain like a sponge. The first truly unbearable assault came in the form of noise. Chloe started inviting her friends over without a word of warning. I would arrive home from my evening shift, my feet swollen, my back aching from scrubbing floors in some downtown office tower, and find 4, sometimes 5, unfamiliar women laughing loudly in my living room, wine glasses clinking and music blasting. The smoke, usually from cheap cigarettes, would hit my face the moment I opened the door. The first time she waved a dismissive hand, her perfect smile in place. "Oh, sorry, Mom," she'd say, "I forgot to tell you, but don't worry, we're almost leaving." But they never left quickly. They would stay until 11 at night, sometimes later, making it impossible for me to rest in my own space. I would retreat to my bedroom, lock the door, and try to sleep through the noise, feeling like a tenant in my own life. This forced retreat was a profound form of loneliness. My apartment, which I had bought for peace, became a constant source of anxiety. I tried to talk to Mark about it, waiting until Chloe was out one afternoon. I spoke carefully, choosing my words to sound reasonable, not accusatory. I explained that I wasn't opposed to her having friends, but I needed them to let me know beforehand. I simply needed to prepare myself after a difficult workday. Mark sighed, a deep, heavy sound that instantly put me on the defensive. He looked at me with exhaustion, not understanding, and the words he chose wounded me more deeply than Chloe's neglect. He told me, "Mom, it's just for a little while. Don't be so strict. Chloe just wants to feel comfortable here. Feel comfortable." Those 2 words echoed in my mind like a fresh wound, because I wanted to feel comfortable too. I wanted to feel comfortable in the chair I chose, in the quiet I earned, in the home I paid for. But apparently my comfort no longer mattered. What mattered was that Chloe felt happy. Chloe felt welcome. Chloe could do whatever she wanted. And I, the owner, the one who had poured 40 years of sweat into every inch of that drywall, had to shut up and endure. I had to be understanding. I had to be patient. Because if I pushed back, I risked becoming the problematic mother-in-law, the bitter old woman who doesn't let the young people live. The fear of being the villain was stronger than my need for peace. The real breaking point, the moment the invisible boundaries were crossed with deliberate malice, occurred in my bedroom. My bedroom, the last private sanctuary I thought I had left. One afternoon, I returned from the grocery store and found Chloe there. She wasn't hiding. She was standing next to my open closet, going through my clothes, pulling out my dresses, the wine-colored one, the sand-colored one, the pearl gray one. She was stuffing them into large plastic garbage bags. When she saw me, she didn't jump or apologize. She simply looked up, her expression completely neutral, and said, "Mom, we need space for our things. You have too many old clothes. I'm going to donate these." She held up a bag containing a dark green dress I wore the day Mark graduated. In another bag was a peach-colored silk blouse my husband had given me for our anniversary. These were not just clothes. They were fragments of my history, pieces of the boy I raised, pieces of the man I loved. And she was going to throw them away as if they were trash. As if my life, my memories were trash. Something inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I walked up to her, pulled the bag gently but firmly from her hands, and spoke in the calmest, steeliest voice I could muster. "Chloe, these are my clothes, and this is my room. Do not come in here again without my permission." She blinked, shocked by the sudden boundary. She looked at me as if I had just insulted her entire existence, then turned and left the room without a single word. That night, Mark came home and was predictably furious. He said I had made Chloe feel bad, that she was only trying to help, that I was being selfish. Selfish, me, the one who had given up her peace, her privacy, her home. I felt the injustice of it all crush me. I went to sleep, crying that night, feeling completely alone, realizing that in my own house, I no longer had a voice or a vote. But the assault on my space did not end there. The weeks passed and the situation worsened, evolving into a commercial occupation. Chloe started an online sales business and began using my apartment as a warehouse. Boxes and more boxes arrived, stacked in the hallway, piled high in the living room, even cluttering the kitchen counter. I was constantly tripping over packages whenever I left my room. When I complained, Mark merely rolled his eyes. "Mom, it's temporary. She's building her future. Can't you support her a little?" Support her. I was providing her a roof, electricity, and water. But now, I also had to endure my home, looking like a chaotic depot with delivery drivers constantly ringing my doorbell and strangers coming in and out, looking for packages. And the worst part, the fuel for my silent fury, was that Chloe never once said thank you. She acted as if this massive intrusion was her right, as if I owed her something. She was thriving, building her future, while my present life felt reduced to cleaning up after her mess, just as I had cleaned up after strangers for 40 years. The ultimate humiliation was yet to come. One evening, exhausted after my cleaning shift, my knees and back screaming in protest, I opened my door hoping for a hot bath and silence. Instead, I was met with music blasting, thick cigarette smoke, and a full-blown party. People I didn't know drinking, laughing, spilling wine on my sofa. I froze in the entryway. I saw Chloe in the center, a glass in her hand, utterly unconcerned. "Oh, Mom," she yelled over the music. "I didn't know you'd be home so early. We're celebrating lots of sales this week." No one moved. No one turned down the music. I was invisible in my own home. I retreated again, locking myself in my bedroom and crying silently until the party ended at 3 a.m. The next morning, I found my living room destroyed, broken bottles, stains, and Chloe sleeping peacefully, having cleaned nothing. And I, the mother, the owner, the housekeeper, cleaned it all up again. I went to sleep crying that night. For the first time, I felt completely alone in my own house, and I knew this was just the beginning. I didn't know the sound of a doorbell could bring such dread. The boxes arrived, stacked in the hallway and the kitchen, turning my home into a warehouse for a future that wasn't mine. The shame of cleaning up Chloe's party, Mess the sticky glasses. The cigarette burns on the carpet was a heavy layer of dirt over my soul, but it was nothing compared to the slow, suffocating loss of control that followed. The constant deliveries, the endless boxes had already turned my home into a chaotic, impersonal storage unit. I was tripping over products for her online business every time I left my room, my small haven now resembling a depot. When I complained, Mark's patience had completely vanished. He would simply repeat the mantra, "Mom, it's temporary. She's building her future. Can't you support her a little?" His voice carried not affection, but annoyance. I realized then that my continuous support was now the price of his companionship, and the cost was my peace. I tried one last time to appeal to him, mother to son. I even went all the way to his office downtown. I needed him to listen, without Chloe's presence, without her judgment poisoning the air. I told him everything, how I couldn't rest, how I felt steamrolled, how I had lost my space. He listened silent until I was finished. Then he let out a deep, weary sigh, the sigh of a man who saw his mother as an inconvenience. "Mom, I know it's hard," he conceded, "but we're saving money. We just need a few more months. Please be patient." A few more months. They had already been living with me for a year and a half, and every day was worse. Yet because he was my son, the only child I had, the one I didn't want to lose, I swallowed my pride and nodded. I went home in silence, the truth that I was sacrificing my life for a man who didn't see me a bitter pill. The breaking point, the moment I saw the true monstrous intent hidden beneath Chloe's immaculate nails, came one dreary afternoon. I was returning from the market, my bags heavy, climbing the stairs slowly because the elevator was predictably broken. As I reached my floor, I heard voices I didn't recognize inside my apartment. I opened the door quietly and froze. Chloe was with a man in a sharp suit, carrying an expensive-looking briefcase. They were strolling through my living room, my modest, carefully kept living room, as if they were inspecting an exhibition. The man was taking notes, glancing at the walls, estimating measurements with his eyes. My blood turned to ice when I heard the words that shattered my last illusion of security. "This apartment is a good size," the agent murmured professionally. "Excellent location. It could sell easily for around $120,000, maybe more." Chloe nodded, that familiar practiced smile wide on her face. "Perfect. You see, my mother-in-law is very old. She's going to need to move somewhere with more care soon, and we need our own space. My mother-in-law is very old." She spoke about me as if I were not standing 10 feet away, but rather a decaying problem that needed to be neatly solved and disposed of. She was planning to sell the apartment I bought with 40 years of cleaning the apartment that was my only refuge, and ship me off to a nursing home. My home, my history, my life, all reduced to a monetary value to fund her future. I dropped the bags. The noise, the sound of apples rolling across my hardwood floor, made them both spin around. Chloe's face went instantly pale, a flicker of panic, but only for a second. She recovered quickly, pulling that fake smile back into place. "Oh, Mom, you scared me. This is Mr. Davies. He's a real estate agent. He was just, giving me some advice, for the future." Mr. Davies looked profoundly uncomfortable. He mumbled an excuse about a phone call, and practically ran out the door. Chloe stood there still smiling. I asked her point blank what she was doing. She answered me calmly, as if discussing the weather. "Mom, I'm just planning. Mark and I have talked. You can't live alone forever. This place is too big for you. It would be better to sell it and move you somewhere more comfortable. With nurses, with people your age. A place with nurses. A nursing home." She wanted to take the apartment I bought with my sweat, with my hands cracked from so much scrubbing, and kick me out. She wanted to keep everything. I told her to leave. I told her to get out of my apartment immediately. She actually laughed. "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. I'm just thinking of what's best for you." And then, insultingly, she walked off to her room as if I were the irrational one. That night, I waited for Mark. I showed him the business card the agent had left behind. I told him Chloe was planning to sell my apartment without my permission, and the words he chose in response were the true heartbreak. He didn't defend me. He didn't deny it. He said, "Mom, it's not that serious. She was just exploring options. Maybe she's right. Maybe it would be better for you to be somewhere they can take care of you." In that moment, I knew I had lost him. Chloe hadn't just moved in. She had poisoned him completely. My son no longer saw me as his mother. He saw me as a burden, an obstacle, something old that needed to be put on a shelf and forgotten. I retreated to my room, closing the door on the man I had raised alone. For the first time in years, I felt a deep, wrenching hatred not towards Mark or Chloe, but towards myself, for having been so weak, so accommodating, for having sacrificed my dignity trying to be the perfect, selfless mother. But out of that self-hatred, something hard and resolute was born. The realization hit me with the force of a punch. If I didn't defend myself, no one would. I was 66 years old, but I wasn't dead. And this apartment, this symbol of 40 years of grueling labor, was legally mine. No one could take it from me, not even my own family. I was going to fight back. I looked in the mirror and saw a tired woman, wrinkled but not defeated. Not yet. I was 66 years old, but I wasn't dead. I was going to fight back. And the first step was to find someone who still believed in justice. If you have ever had to make a hard choice between family loyalty and your own survival, share your story in the comments below. And if you're ready to see how I finally fought back with the law on my side, then stick around and tell me where you're watching from. The worst was yet to come. If 40 years of cleaning offices taught me anything, it was this. The powerful always have lawyers, and the weak have to be smarter. I chose to be smarter. The hatred I felt toward myself for being weak quickly transformed into a cold, focused determination. I looked at my wrinkled hands cracked from decades of industrial cleaners and realized they were not hands of a feeble old woman. They were the hands of a survivor. I was 66, yes, but I was not defeated. I was going to fight back, not with screaming or tears, but with strategy, with proof, and with the law on my side. The first step was to find someone who still believed in justice. That afternoon, I went to Evelyn, my neighbor from the 4th floor. Evelyn is 70, a sharp, wise woman who had lived in this building longer than anyone else. She saw my face as soon as I knocked, and without a word, she ushered me in, brewed me a cup of tea, and simply listened. I told her everything: the replaced furniture, the parties, the cleaning up, the real estate agent, and Mark's chilling indifference. When I finished, Evelyn held my hand and spoke words that cut through my self-pity. "Grace," she said firmly, "a mother's love doesn't mean letting yourself be trampled. It means teaching them respect. And you never taught your daughter-in-law where the boundaries are. Now you have to set them before it's too late." I confessed that I had no concrete proof, that everything had been verbal. Evelyn didn't flinch. "Then get proof," she instructed. "Record her, take pictures, save messages, whatever it takes, because if this goes legal, you're going to need more than your word." The next morning, I secured my second ally, Mr. Harrison, a reputable lawyer specializing in real estate and elder protection. He was about 65, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. I laid out my fears, the story of the agent, and the threat of the nursing home. Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair and confirmed my worst fears. "Mrs. Grace, you are in danger. What your daughter-in-law is trying to do is called fraud. And if she manages to get you to sign that power of attorney under false pretenses, you could lose everything legally." He explained that this was a common tragedy for many elderly people who sign documents blindly trusting their own children. He immediately put alerts on my property deed and advised me to change all my passwords. Crucially, he gave me my marching orders. Do not sign anything, absolutely nothing, without consulting him first. He also suggested something that terrified me, yet felt profoundly liberating. "Mrs. Grace, you have the right to ask them to leave. This is your apartment. You did not sign any lease agreement with them. They are there out of your goodwill. And that goodwill can end whenever you decide. You can give them a 30-day notice. Or if you feel in danger, you can change the locks. It is your legal right." The idea of changing the locks felt like holding a shield again. It meant I had the power to reclaim my life. Armed with Evelyn's counsel and Mr. Harrison's legal backing, I began my campaign. I bought a small digital recorder and a phone with a better camera. I started documenting everything, every box, every late-night party, everything Chloe moved. And then came the ultimate weapon, the recordings. It didn't take long. A week later, Chloe invited her friends over again. I was in my room, but I left the door slightly ajar and pressed record. I heard the usual laughter and wine clinking. Then one of her friends asked the inevitable question. "So when are you and Mark finally moving into your own place?" Chloe's laugh, that familiar, high-pitched, self-satisfied sound, filled the recording. "Why? This place is already ours," she replied. "Well, it's still in the old woman's name, but I'm working on that. Mark has almost convinced her to sign a power of attorney. Once we have that, we can do whatever we want. Sell, rent it out, whatever." And then came the sentence that confirmed her pure malice, the sentence that erased all my motherly guilt. "She's not good for anything anymore except cleaning." The words hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just plotting to steal my home. They were laughing at my life's work, laughing at my identity. They saw me only as a cleaning tool, disposable, once they had extracted the final piece of service. A power of attorney. They wanted me to sign away my legal rights, my life savings, my future to them. And Mark, my son, was in on the plan. I saved that recording like it was gold. It wasn't just evidence, it was my salvation. A few days later, the trap was sprung. I received a text from Mark. "Mom, we need to talk. It's important tonight." I knew exactly what was coming, the power of attorney. I remembered Mr. Harrison's precise instructions. Don't show fear. Don't show anger. Just listen. Then say, "I needed time to think about it." That I wouldn't sign anything without reading it thoroughly. I arrived home at 7, finding Mark and Chloe sitting in the living room, overly serious. Mark cleared his throat, performing the role of the concerned son. He talked about my well-being, about my hard work, about how I was not as young as I used to be. Chloe chimed in with her syrupy voice, talking about nice residences with nurses. They were laying the groundwork for the ambush. Then Mark pulled out the papers. He placed them on the coffee table. "To make the transition easier, we need you to sign this," he said, pushing the stack of documents toward me. "It's a power of attorney, so we can handle the sale of the apartment and all the paperwork. That way you don't have to worry about anything legal. We'll take care of everything." They wanted me to sign away my life. I looked at the papers, then looked straight into their eyes, and with the steadiest, calmest voice I could muster, I delivered my counterattack. "I need to read this carefully and consult with someone. I don't sign anything without fully understanding what it means." Chloe's perfect mask shattered. Her smile vanished. "Consult with who? We're your family. Don't you trust us?" The manipulation, the guilt, it was all there. But it no longer worked. I stood firm. "It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of responsibility. These are legal documents. I need to understand them." "1 week. Chloe erupted, snatching the papers. "You're unbelievable. You treat us like criminals. You're so ungrateful." Mark, disappointed, just shook his head and followed her to their room. I was left alone, shaking but feeling a profound sense of pride because I hadn't given in. I had said no. That night I heard Chloe screaming from their room, calling me stubborn and stupid, and I heard Mark's silence. I knew my son was no longer on my side. I went into my room, locked the door, and hugged the key to the new locks I had ordered that morning. I knew tonight I had sealed their fate. But when they came back, only one of us was getting in. I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea in my hands. I was terrified but firm. I was waiting for the sound of a key that doesn't work. The sound of freedom. The morning after, refusing to sign the power of attorney was the longest of my life. I felt a cold dread, but it was accompanied by a strange, exhilarating sense of purpose. I had made my decision. I had to reclaim my life, and the locks were the final physical boundary I needed to draw. I called Mr. Harrison and told him that I was ready, that I could not live invaded in my own home anymore. He moved swiftly, arranging for a trusted locksmith to come on a Friday afternoon, a day when Mark had a work conference and Chloe was planning to visit her mother. The timing was perfect. I called in sick to my cleaning job, a rare occurrence, but my voice was trembling, convincing enough. It wasn't sickness. It was pure nervous anticipation. Mr. Harrison called to confirm that the coast was clear. He advised me to quickly gather any small item of sentimental value from the shared spaces and secure it in my bedroom just in case. I walked through the apartment now, a battlefield of boxes and discarded mess, performing one last retrieval mission. I found my husband's old wedding vase, the handful of family photos Chloe hadn't replaced with her sleek modern art, and my box of cherished letters from a lifelong past. With every object I rescued and locked safely behind my bedroom door, I felt I was gathering pieces of my own scattered soul. At exactly 2 o'clock, the locksmith arrived. He was a polite young man. I explained the situation briefly, avoiding Mark and Chloe's names. He nodded, telling me he had seen cases like this before, and assured me the job would be quick. I sat on my old comfortable armchair, the one Chloe hated, but I had thankfully kept in storage, and listened to the metallic sounds, the drill, the turning of the gears, the click of the new cylinders sliding into place. Every sound was a shield being raised, a barrier proclaiming, "This is mine, and no one else is getting in without my permission." 30 minutes later, he handed me 2 sets of shiny new keys, heavy and powerful in my palm. He confirmed that no one with the old keys, not Mark, not Chloe, could ever open this door again. He wished me luck, and he left. I stood there clutching the keys to my chest, and I wept. I cried with relief, with the sheer terror of what was to come. But most overwhelmingly, I cried with freedom. For the first time in 2 years, my house felt like mine again. My life felt like it belonged to me. Mr. Harrison arrived at 4, using the agreed-upon knock code. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps. He came in his briefcase, heavy with legal certainty. He gave me a thick envelope. Inside was the official formal notice, a 30-day eviction notice. He explained that when they arrived and couldn't get in, I was to slide this letter under the door without opening it, without speaking, without arguing. He warned me, "They will try to manipulate you. They will scream. Mark will say painful things. Chloe will call you a monster. You must not open that door. If you give in, it will all have been in vain." I promised him, even though the thought of Mark's face broke my heart. The hours crawled by. Mr. Harrison stayed until 6, distracting me with small talk. Then he left, and I was alone with my decision, my fear, and my magnificent silence. A silence that was now peaceful, clean, and entirely my own. No boxes, no loud music, no strangers. I waited. At 11 o'clock that night, I heard the elevator chime. Footsteps. Voices. Mark and Chloe were back. My heart hammered against my ribs. I heard the key slide into the lock, the old useless key. Then came the sound that changed everything. The grinding sound of a key that turns but does not open, that is stuck, that does not fit. Silence. Then Chloe's voice, sharp with confusion. "What's wrong? Why won't it open?" Mark tried his key. Nothing. He tried again, frantic. "It's not working. The key isn't working." Then came the escalation. Confusion melted into panic, and panic erupted into pure animal fury. Chloe started pounding. "Mom, open the door. The key isn't working. Open up." The pounding grew violent. "Grace, open this door right now." "What did you do? Did you change the locks? Are you crazy?" Mark joined her, his voice frantic, pleading. "Mom, open up. What's going on, Mom, please?" His plea pierced my heart, splitting me in two, but I stayed. Seated. I remembered the Kodut. I remembered the power of attorney. I remembered their plans for the nursing home. Then Chloe lost control, completely unleashing the scream that cut through the building like a knife, waking everyone up. "Open this damn door. This is my house. All my things are in there. You can't do this to us. This is illegal." She pounded, hysterical, shouting at neighbors, who peered out that I was a crazy old woman who had thrown them out on the street. Mark, defeated, finally shouted, "Mom, how could you? Who gave you permission? Open this door now. You can't do this to us. I'm your son." I stood up. I walked to the door with the heavy envelope in my hand. I slid it underneath. The silence that followed was brief but absolute. I heard the paper being snatched up, then the sound of tearing, then Mark's voice reading aloud. Eviction notice. You have 30 days to remove your belongings. Any unauthorized attempt to enter will be reported to the authorities. Signed, Grace Herrera. Chloe exploded not with rage this time but with panic. This can't be real. This isn't legal. You can't just kick us out like this. We live here. We have rights. She realized she had lost. Mark's voice was different, broken. Mom, please, let's talk. Open the door. We can solve this. It doesn't have to be this way. But I didn't answer. I stayed with my back against the door. Then Evelyn's voice, calm and firm, cut through the hallway. It's midnight. You are waking up the entire building. If you don't quiet down, I'm going to call the police. Mark tried to argue, but Evelyn stopped him. Mark, she said, her voice surprisingly strong. I've known your mother since she moved into this building. She is a good woman. And if she locked you out, it's because she had her reasons. Good reasons. Now please leave, or I'm making the call. I heard Chloe's retreating footsteps. She ran down the stairs like a wounded, cornered animal. Mark stayed a moment longer. I heard him breathe heavy and defeated. Then he spoke low and final. Mom, I don't understand why you did this. I thought you loved me. I thought I could always count on you. But I guess I was wrong. And then he left. I collapsed onto the floor, my back against the door. I cried not just for the chaos, but for the sun. I realized I had lost a long time ago. I heard his footsteps moving away, too slow, heavy, and when the silence finally came, I collapsed. I fell to the floor with my back against the door, and I cried because I had just realized that I had lost my son a long time ago. But I also had my house back. Tuyệt vời, tôi sẽ tiếp tục triển khai. Chương 6 theo dàn ý. Đi 1. Tập trung vào giai đoạn hạ nhiệt, tái thiết lập ranh giới và bài học cuối cùng. Tôi sẽ đảm bảo số từ mục tiêu và mạch cảm xúc. Đau thương chuyển thành thanh thản, hy vọng. Chương 6 tái thiết lập ranh giới, redefining love and boundaries. Khoảng 900 to hook. The silence was deafening at first. But slowly, it became my best companion. In that silence, I could finally hear myself heal. The days following the night of the scream were strangely peaceful. I still cried when I thought of Mark's face at the door, but the apartment itself was quiet. An absolute beautiful silence I had forgotten existed. There was no more loud music, no smoke, no shouting, and most importantly, no boxes. I was finally alone, yet I felt less lonely than I had in 2 years. I began reclaiming my space, putting the horrible modern furniture out on the curb, retrieving my old comfortable armchair from storage, and putting my wedding vase back on the shelf where it belonged. Every small change felt like peeling off a layer of dirt, a liberation. Mark didn't give up immediately. The messages came thick and fast, furious at first. Mom, this is ridiculous. I'm going to get a lawyer then. Softer, more manipulative. Mom, I miss you. Why are you doing this to me? I always loved you. That was the hardest part. The guilt, the voice that whispers, maybe you overreacted. But then I would recall the agent, the nursing home, and Chloe's cruel laugh in the recording, and the guilt would fade. What I had done was not cruelty, it was survival. My anchor during this confusing time was Evelyn. She came over the morning after the scream, used the quiet knock code, and simply hugged me when I opened the door. She told me the neighbors were all on my side. They had heard the parties and the shouting and knew what Chloe had been doing. Her words gave me a strength. I desperately needed grace. She said, you did. The only thing you could do. Defend yourself. That is never wrong. Never. She helped me understand that choosing survival didn't make me a bad mother. It made me human. It made me strong. The legal battle lasted 2 months, but Mr. Harrison was my fortress. He called me eventually with the news Mark's lawyer had withdrawn the case. The evidence, the recordings of Chloe, the photos of the real estate agent, was too damning. They realized any judge would see the full picture of the attempted fraud. It was a victory, but it was hollow, because it confirmed that Mark had chosen to give up the fight for our relationship. Mr. Harrison also delivered a chilling detail. Chloe had a history. She had pulled similar financial schemes with previous partners, manipulating and attempting to take property. Mark had been just another victim, and I had been the obstacle she needed to remove. Learning this hurt in a different way. My son had been used, but he had chosen to remain blind. I tried one last time to reach him, sending a simple message. Mark, I need you to know something important about Chloe. Please call me. He never responded. That's when I understood he had made his choice. The truth didn't matter. He had chosen resentment and chosen her. One afternoon months later, I was introduced to a new reality. I received a call from a woman named Sarah, a friend of Mark's from work. We met at a coffee shop. She told me Chloe had finally done to Mark what she planned to do to me. She had cheated on him, left him, and taken everything of value. His savings, his computer, his expensive clothes. Mark was destroyed alone, and finally starting to realize how she had used both of us. 2 weeks after that meeting, Mark sent the message I had been waiting for. Mom, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you, but I need to talk to you, please. We met at the coffee shop. He looked terrible, thin, tired, broken. He started crying, confessing everything, how Chloe had manipulated him, how he had been blind, how he had treated me badly, and accused me of terrible things. I let him speak. Then I asked the hardest question. Mark, if Chloe hadn't left you, would you be here right now? He paused, looked away, and answered with brutal honesty. Probably not. That honesty was the gift I needed. It meant his remorse was real. He didn't want a quick fix. He wanted responsibility. He said losing my trust was the highest price he had ever paid. I told him I appreciated his apology, but I couldn't just forget everything. I needed time. I needed to see actions, not just words. He respected that. Months later, Mark asked to meet again. He brought a box. Inside were my recovered belongings, the wedding vase, the old family photos, the blanket my husband gave me, things Chloe had planned to sell or discard. He had saved them. When I took the vase, wiping it with my sleeve, the tears fell because it was a piece of my history restored. For the first time, I saw the boy I raised, not the man who had screamed at me. A year after the locks were changed, Mark invited me to dinner. He handed me a simple key. It's the key to my new apartment, he said. I paid for it myself. I want you to have it not because I expect you to come, but because I want you to know that there's always a place for you in my life. When you're ready, if you're ever ready. I took the key, the symbol of his independence and his respect. I hugged him, a short, timid, but real hug. I told him I was proud of the man he was becoming. I still did not give him a key to my apartment. That space remained my sanctuary, but our relationship continued to improve slowly. I had learned a profound truth. A mother's love doesn't mean sacrificing everything. It means setting healthy boundaries. It means taking care of myself so I can care for others. As I sat in my reclaimed living room, my cat Rusty curled up on my lap. I adopted him from the shelter. An old soul like me, I knew I had won. Not a war against my son, but a war for myself, for my dignity, for my right to exist without fear. I learned that boundaries don't destroy relationships. Boundaries protect the relationships that deserve to exist. And changing the locks was just the beginning of taking my life back. I learned that boundaries don't destroy relationships. Boundaries protect the relationships that deserve to exist. And changing the locks was just the beginning of taking my life back. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes surviving means closing doors, even if they are the doors to your own son. But the most vital lesson I learned is that a mother's greatest legacy isn't her sacrifice, it is her dignity. I did not lose my son when I changed the locks. I lost him when he stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as an obstacle. My choice to fight back was simply a declaration that my life, my effort, and my peace were worth more than their convenience. I didn't just save my apartment, I saved myself. I finally understood that sometimes to get your peace back, it's not the lock that needs to change. It's the people you let in. If you have ever had to choose between your self-respect and keeping the peace in your family, I want to hear your story. Comment below with a 1 if this story touched your heart, or tell us where you're watching from.